I returned from vacation to find strangers living in my home. HOA sold it without my consent. The sun was dipping below the horizon when my plane touched down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was exhausted, but buzzing with the kind of contentment only a month-long vacation in Italy could deliver. The cobblestone streets of Florence, the salty breeze of the Amalfi Coast, and the endless plates of carbonara had left me recharged, ready to slip back into the quiet rhythm of my suburban life. My little house on Caron Drive, with its wraparound porch and creaky oak floors, was waiting for me. Or so I thought. I hauled my suitcase out of the taxi, the wheels clattering against the pavement as I approached my driveway. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, and the neighborhood was as pristine as ever: manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, and the faint hum of sprinklers. The Caron Homeowners Association, or HOA as we all called it, ran this place like a military base. No blade of grass dared grow too tall, no shutter hung askew. I'd always found their rules suffocating, but I played along. Pay the dues, mow the lawn, keep the peace. That's how it worked. But something was off. My porch light was on, casting a warm glow over a pair of rocking chairs I didn't recognize. A tricycle lay abandoned in the yard, its pink streamers fluttering in the breeze. My stomach twisted. I didn't own a tricycle. I didn't even have kids. I fumbled for my keys, my heart picking up speed. The lock didn't turn. I tried again, jiggling the handle, but the door stayed stubbornly shut. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of a woman in a floral dress, stirring something on my stove. My stove. In my kitchen. Hey! I banged on the door, my voice louder than I intended. Who's in there? This is my house. The woman froze, her spoon hovering midair. A man appeared behind her, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a flannel shirt that screamed suburban dad. He frowned, then strode toward the door. When it swung open, I was hit with the smell of garlic and marinara, and for a split second, I thought I was back in Italy. But the man's voice snapped me back to reality. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone polite but edged with suspicion. "Help me?" I laughed, incredulous. "You're in my house. Who the hell are you?" The woman joined him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'm sorry, but you must be mistaken," she said softly. "We bought this house 2 weeks ago. It's ours." The world tilted. My suitcase slipped from my hand, thudding onto the porch. "Bought it? That's impossible. I own this house. I've lived here for 5 years." The man, his name was Greg, I'd later learn, crossed his arms. "Look, lady, we went through the HOA, everything's legal. Papers signed, money paid. You need to take this up with them." The HOA, those 3 letters sent a chill down my spine. The Caron HOA was notorious for its iron grip on the neighborhood. But this? Selling my house while I was sipping espresso in Rome? It was unthinkable. I stormed off the porch, my phone already in hand, dialing the HOA president, Marjorie Platt. Marjorie was the kind of woman who smiled while twisting the knife. Her voicemail picked up, her saccharine drawl grating my nerves. "You've reached Marjorie Platt, president of the Caron Homeowners Association. Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you promptly." "Marjorie, this is Elise Harper." I spat into the phone. "You better call me back right now. There are strangers living in my house, and they're saying you sold it. What the hell is going on?" I hung up, my hands shaking. Greg and his wife Lydia stood in the doorway, watching me like I was a feral animal. I couldn't blame them. I probably looked unhinged, my hair wild from the flight, my eyes blazing with fury. But this was my home, my sanctuary, the place where I'd rebuilt my life after my divorce, where I'd painted every wall myself, where I'd cried and laughed and danced alone to old jazz records. And now it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I checked into a motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and questionable stains on the carpet. My phone stayed silent, no call from Marjorie. By morning, I was a mess of caffeine and rage, driving back to Caron Drive to confront her in person. The HOA office was a squat brick building at the entrance of the neighborhood, its windows plastered with flyers about community barbecues and lawn care regulations. Marjorie was there, perched behind her desk like a queen on her throne. Her platinum blonde bob was immaculate, her smile as fake as her tan. "Elise, darling," she cooed, gesturing to a chair. "What's all this fuss about?" "Don't darling me," I snapped. "Why are there people living in my house? You sold it? Without my consent." Marjorie's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. She slid a folder across the desk, its contents neatly labeled with my address. 1423, Karen Drive. You were in violation of multiple HOA regulations, Elise. Unpaid dues, neglected property maintenance, and most critically a failure to respond to our notices. Notices? I stared at her, dumbfounded. What notices? I was on vacation. I didn't get any mail. She sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. We sent certified letters, emails, even posted notices on your door. When you didn't respond, we followed protocol. The property was deemed abandoned, and we sold it to recoup the unpaid dues and fines. My mouth went dry. Abandoned? I was gone for a month, Marjorie. A month. Per our bylaws, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Failure to maintain communication with the HOA constitutes neglect. You left your lawn unmowed, your mailbox overflowing. It was an eyesore. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip her desk and shatter her perfect little world. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice low. You had no right. That was my home. My life. You can't just take it. Marjorie shrugged. The sale is final. The new owners, the Thompsons, are lovely people. You'll need to vacate any remaining belongings by the end of the week. I left her office in a daze, the folder clutched in my hands. The documents inside were a nightmare of legalese fines for excessive weed growth, penalties for unattended mail, and a final notice declaring my property forfeited. It was all stamped with the HOA seal, as if that made it righteous. Back at the motel, I spread the papers across the bed, searching for a loophole, anything to fight back. That's when I found it, a single line buried in the sale agreement. The buyer, listed as Gregory and Lydia Thompson, had purchased the house for $250,000. My house, worth at least $600,000, sold for a fraction of its value. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. My friends were scattered across the country, and my family, well, let's just say we weren't on speaking terms after the divorce. Then I remembered Charlie. Charlie Voss was the neighborhood's resident oddball, a retired private investigator who lived in a ramshackle house at the end of Karen Drive. The HOA despised him. His yard was a jungle of wildflowers, his mailbox a rusted relic, but he'd always been kind to me. We'd bonded over our mutual hatred of Marjorie's reign of terror. I found him on his porch, sipping sweet tea and reading a dog-eared paperback. He was in his 60s, with a scruffy beard and a twinkle in his eye that said he'd seen it all. When I told him what happened, he let out a low whistle. That's some next-level HOA nonsense, he said, setting his book aside. But it don't smell right. Selling a house that cheap? Sounds like a scam. You think Marjorie's in on it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Charlie grinned. Oh, I'd bet my left boot she is. Let me poke around. I still got a few tricks up my sleeve. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Charlie promised to dig into the sale records and Marjorie's connections. In the meantime, I decided to confront Greg and Lydia again. Maybe they knew something. Maybe they'd help me. When I knocked on their dormy door, Lydia answered, her face softening when she saw me. Elise, I'm so sorry, she said. We had no idea this would happen. We thought the house was vacant. Can I just see it? I asked, my voice breaking. One last time. She hesitated, then nodded. Stepping inside was like walking into a parallel universe. My furniture was gone, replaced with modern pieces that screamed Pinterest board. The walls were a different color. The air smelled of lavender instead of my usual cedar candles. But the bones of the house were still mine, the creak of the floorboards, the way the light slanted through the kitchen window. Greg joined us, holding a mug of coffee. We're not trying to make this harder for you, he said. But we sunk everything into this place. Our savings, our kids' college funds. We can't just give it back. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. They weren't the enemy. They were victims, too, caught in Marjorie's web. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a small, hand-carved wooden box on the mantel. It was mine, a gift from my grandmother, tucked away in my bedroom closet. How had it ended up here? Lydia, I said, pointing to the box. Where did you get that? She frowned. Oh, that? It was in the attic when we moved in. I thought it was part of the house. The attic. I hadn't been up there in years, but I knew that box hadn't been there when I left for Italy. Someone had moved it. Someone who'd been in my house before the sale. That night, I called Charlie. I think Marjorie was in my house, I told him. She took things, moved things. She planned this. Charlie's voice was grim. I'm starting to think you're right. I found something today. The buyer's agent for your house. It's Marjorie's cousin, Linda. And that $250,000? Half of it's already in an account tied to a shell company. I'm betting Marjorie's got her hands on it. My heart sank. This wasn't just negligence. This was theft. Fraud. A conspiracy. The next morning, I met Charlie at a coffee shop to plan our next move. He slid a photo across the tablia, grainy shot of Marjorie and Linda at a real estate conference, toasting with champagne. They've been pulling this for years, he said. Targeting single homeowners, folks without family nearby. They hit you 'cause you were alone, Elise. They thought you wouldn't fight back. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. They picked the wrong woman. Charlie chuckled. That's the spirit. Here's what we're gonna do. His plan was risky, but brilliant. We'd gather evidence, bank records, emails, anything tying Marjorie to the sale, and take it to the police. But we needed one more piece of the smoking gun. And that's where the twist came in. Enter Mavis Green, the HOA's quiet, mousy treasurer. Mavis had worked under Marjorie for a decade, always nodding along at meetings, never rocking the boat. But Charlie had a hunch. Mavis ain't as loyal as she seems, he said. She's been keeping her own books. If anyone's got dirt on Marjorie, it's her. We found Mavis watering her petunias, her hands trembling as we approached. When I told her my story, her face crumpled. I didn't know it was this bad, she whispered. Marjorie, she made me to fudge the numbers. She said it was for the good of the neighborhood. Mavis, I said, my voice, you can make this right. Help us. She hesitated, then nodded. I have records. Emails, receipts. Marjorie's been skimming dues, selling properties under the table. I kept everything in case I ever needed leverage. Mavis became our secret weapon. She handed over a flash drive packed with evidence, emails between Marjorie and Linda, bank transfers to offshore accounts, even a memo outlining their target list of homeowners. My name was at the top. With Mavis's help, we had enough to bury Marjorie. But I wasn't want to go to the police just yet. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, the shock, the betrayal, the loss of everything she'd built. So we set a trap. The annual Karen Homeowners Association was the perfect stage. The entire neighborhood gathered in the community center, sipping punch and murmuring about landscaping fees. Marjorie stood at the podium, her smile as dazzling as ever, blissfully unaware of the bomb we were about to drop. I stood up, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. I have something to say, I began, holding up the flash drive. This contains proof that Marjorie Platt and her cousin Linda have been stealing from us. They sold my house, me home, without my consent, pocketed the profits, and planned to do the same to others. The room erupted. Marjorie's smile faltered, her face draining of color. That's absurd, she sputtered. Elise is delusional. She's just bitter because she couldn't keep up with her dues. But then Mavis stood up, her voice trembling but firm. It's true, she said. I helped her. I have the records. It's all here. The crowd turned on Marjorie, their murmurs growing into shouts. She tried to flee, but Charlie blocked the door, his grin wide enough to split his face. Not so fast, Marjorie. The police arrived minutes later, cuffing Marjorie and leading her out as the neighborhood watched in stunned silence. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. My house was still gone, my life upended. Greg and Lydia couldn't afford to move, and I couldn't afford to buy it back. The HOA was disbanded, its assets frozen, but the damage was tied up in legal knots that would take years to unravel. I moved into Charlie's spare room, my belongings reduced to a few suitcases and that carved wooden box. Every night, I'd sit on his porch, staring at the stars, trying to make sense of it all. I'd fought back. I'd won. But at what cost? One evening, Charlie joined me, handing me a glass of tea. You did good, kid, he said. You took down a dragon. Yeah, I said, my voice thick with tears. But my home's still gone. He nodded, his eyes distant. Home ain't just a place, Elise. It's the people you fight for. You got Mavis now. You got me. That's something. I looked at him, at his weathered face, and thought of Mavis, risking everything to do the right thing. They were my people now, my unexpected family. But as I sipped my tea, the bitterness lingered. I'd lost more than a house. I'd lost the part of me that believed in fairness, in safety, in home. The stars twinkled above, indifferent to my pain. And somewhere on Karen Drive, Greg and Lydia tucked their kids into bed, living in the house that used to be mine. Life went on, but for me, it would never be the same. Weeks bled into months, and the victory over Marjorie Platt began to feel like a Pyrrhic one. The legal battle to reclaim my house on Karen Drive dragged on, a labyrinth of court filings, depositions, and lawyer fees I could barely afford. Charlie's spare room became my semi-permanent home, its walls adorned with faded fishing photos and a single window that overlooked his unruly garden. I'd lie awake at night, the creak of the old house mingling with the ache in my chest. My life, once so carefully constructed, was now a patchwork of borrowed spaces and shattered dreams. Charlie kept me grounded. He'd shuffle into the kitchen each morning, brewing coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and regale me with stories from his PI, day-staling cheating spouses, busting insurance scams, even once tracking a stolen parrot for a heartbroken widow. His humor was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of despair. "You're tougher than a $2 steak, Elise," he'd say, winking. "This ain't the end of your story." Mavis, too, became a fixture in my life. She'd stop by with casseroles and nervous smiles, her guilt over her role in Marjorie's scheme still raw. We'd sit on Charlie's porch, sipping lemonade and picking apart the HOA's reign of terror. Mavis had her own scars, years of being Marjorie's shadow, swallowing her principles to keep the peace. Her decision to turn on Marjorie had been her rebellion, her redemption. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood, she confessed one evening, her voice barely audible. But I was just protecting her. I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. We'd all played along with the HOA's rules, thinking compliance would keep us safe. But safety was an illusion, and trust in systems like the Karen HOA was a trap. The legal fight took a turn in October, when my lawyer, a wiry man named Paul with a penchant for loud ties, uncovered a bombshell. The shell company tied to Marjorie's profits was linked to a local developer, Carl Henson, who'd been buying up properties across Raleigh for a planned luxury condo project. My house, it turned out, was one of several targeted by Henson and Marjorie in a scheme to flip low-value sales into high-value developments. The HOA's abandonment clause was their weapon, wielded against homeowners like me who were vulnerable, single, no local family, out of town. Paul's discovery gave us leverage, but it also painted a target on our backs. One night, as I walked to my car after a late meeting with him, I noticed a black SUV idling across the street. Its headlights flicked on as I unlocked my door, and for a moment, I froze, my pulse hammering. The SUV pulled away slowly, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. I told Charlie about it the next day, and his face darkened. "Henson's got money and muscle," he said. "You gotta watch your back." The paranoia set in. Every creak in Charlie's house became a footstep, every stranger's glance a threat. I started carrying pepper spray, checking my rearview mirror obsessively. Mavis, too, grew jumpy, claiming she'd seen someone rifling through her trash. Charlie, ever the pragmatist, rigged motion sensor lights around his property and dusted off his old revolver. "Just in case," he said, his grin not quite reaching his eyes. The twist came in November, during a court hearing. Paul had subpoenaed Henson's financial records, hoping to tie him directly to the fraudulent sales. But the real surprise was a witness who took the stand unannounced, Greg Thompson, the man living in my house. I hadn't seen him since that day on my porch, and his presence in the courtroom hit me like a punch. He looked different, haggard, his flannel shirt wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with guilt. "Mr. Thompson," Paul began, "why are you here today?" Greg cleared his throat, glancing at me before speaking. "I didn't know the house was stolen," he said, his voice rough. "Lydia and we trusted the HOA, but a few weeks ago, I found something in the basement. A box of papers, hidden under the floorboards. They had Marjorie Platt's name on theme mails, contracts, even a list of other houses she planned to sell." The courtroom buzzed. I stared at Greg, my anger warring with gratitude. He'd kept my wooden box, and now he'd found another piece of the puzzle. Why hadn't he told me sooner? Why hide it? "I didn't come forward right away," Greg admitted, as if reading my mind. "I was scared. We've got 2 kids, and this house is all we have. If we lose it, we're on the street. But it's not right. Elise deserves her home back." His words cracked something in me. I'd spent months hating Greg and Lydia, seeing them as interlopers, but they were just pawns in the same game. Their testimony, combined with the papers Greg turned over, was damning. The judge ordered a freeze on Henson's assets and scheduled a full investigation into the HOA's dealings. For the first time, I dared to hope I might get my house back. But hope is a cruel thing. The night after the hearing, I got a call from Mavis, her voice frantic. "Elise, it's Charlie. He's in the hospital. Someone attacked him." I raced to the ER, my mind a blur of fear and guilt. Charlie was conscious when I arrived, his face bruised and his arm in a sling, but his spirit was unbroken. "Took a couple swings at the bastard," he rasped, managing a grin. "Should have seen his face when I clocked him." The attacker, Charlie said, had jumped him outside his house, demanding the flash drive Mavis had given us. Charlie fought back, but the man, a hired thug he suspected, got away. The police were involved now, but the message was clear. Henson wasn't going down without a fight. Charlie's attack galvanized me. I couldn't let his sacrifice be for nothing. With Paul's help, I pushed for an emergency injunction to halt the sale of my house and others targeted by Henson. Mavis, shaken but resolute, testified about the HOA's inner workings, exposing Marjorie's manipulation and Henson's greed. Greg and Lydia, too, joined the fight, publicly sharing their story and rallying other homeowners to check their own property records. The neighborhood turned on Henson. Protests erupted outside his office, with signs reading "Hands off our homes" and "Justice for Karen Drive." The media caught wind of the scandal, and soon, the story was everywhere: local news, posts, even a viral thread calling Marjorie the HOA Karen from hell. It was cathartic seeing her empire crumble, but it didn't erase the loss. In January, the court ruled in my favor. The sale of my house was deemed fraudulent, and ownership was restored to me. Henson and Marjorie faced criminal charges, their assets seized to compensate victims. It was a triumph, a headline-worthy win. But when I walked into 1423 Karen Drive, key in hand, it didn't feel like home anymore. The Thompsons had moved out, their furniture gone, the walls bare. The house was a shell, stripped of the warmth I'd poured into it. My belongings, long since sold or donated, were irreplaceable. The creaky oak floors were still there, but they echoed with someone else's life now. I sat on the porch, the same one where I'd first seen that tricycle, and cried for everything I'd lost: not just the house, but the trust, the security, the belief that hard work and good intentions could protect you. Charlie recovered, his bruises fading but his fire undimmed. He and Mavis became my anchors, my chosen family. We'd meet for coffee, trading stories and laughter, trying to rebuild what the HOA had torn apart. Greg and Lydia sent me a letter, apologizing again and enclosing a photo of their kids playing in my yard. "We hope you find peace," they wrote. I kept the photo, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was humanity. But the ending wasn't tidy. The legal fees left me drowning in debt, and the house, though mine again, was a financial albatross. I sold it in the spring, using the money to pay off my loans and start fresh in a small apartment downtown. It was a bitter pill, letting go of Karen Drive, but I couldn't live in a ghost of my past. The final twist came on the day I moved out. As I packed the last of my things, I found a note tucked inside my grandmother's wooden box, written in her shaky handwriting. "Elise," it read, "home is where you fight for what's right. Never stop." I hadn't noticed it before, hidden in a false bottom. It felt like a message from beyond, a reminder that the fight against Marjorie, against Henson, against despair had been worth it, even if the cost was steep. I left Karen Drive for the last time, the note in my pocket, Charlie and Mavis waving from the curb. The neighborhood looked the same: manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, but it was different now. The HOA was gone, its legacy a cautionary tale. And I was different, too. Stronger, maybe, but scarred. The world wasn't as kind as I'd once believed, but it was full of people like Charlie and Mavis, like Greg and Lydia, who made it worth fighting for. As I drove away, the sun setting behind me, I thought about my grandmother's words. Home wasn't a place. It was the battles you chose, the people you stood with, the truths you refused to let die. I'd lost my house, but I'd found something else myself. What do you think about Elisa's story? Was she right to fight, even when the cost was so high? Should Greg and Lydia have done more to help her sooner? And what about the HOA's role? How much blame lies with Marjorie, and how much with the system that let her thrive? Share your thoughts on what's right, what's wrong, and what you'd do in their shoes.